Hi, in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the 49ers roster. This is my first and official 2025 off-season, what I would do if I was the GM or owner. I'll be showing the roster as it stands now, the draft pending free agency. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy. As it currently stands, the 49ers are 5-6, and facing the Bills Sunday night. We currently are ravished by injuries and as a team, have no direction. We are not the same juggernaut as last year. I thought in the begging we had gotten better on paper, but we're old, slow, and expensive. We need to get rid of underperforming players and big contracts and get younger. We need an explosion of youth and depth at every position. Injuries: Diamador Lenoir knee, Aaron Banks concussion, and Jordan Elliott concussion have been ruled OUT for Sunday, per Kyle Shanahan. Aaron Banks, Nick Bosa, Jordan Elliott, Trent Williams, and many more were without so many of our stars and depth. I've heard so many people online expressing that they want Kyle fired. I get it, I understand, he's frustrating and chokes in the biggest moments. But if we were to fire him, who would take his place? Hope that Ben Johnson wants to coach the 49ers. That's not happening. The Niners need a whole coaching staff change. We have a lot of yes men that Kyle likes and average staff. We need an overhaul at the staffing positions. That's why in this section, I'll show the 49ers coaching staff that matter most, and who needs to be fired and or is good enough to stay, and who I'd replace them with. Don't get me wrong, there are some coaches that are good enough, but it's time for a change. And we're not firing Kyle. We'd be even more of a dumpster fire than we are now. Nick Sorensen. It really was a bad hire from the beginning. He's a middle-of-the-pack defensive coordinator that is just like Kyle. Shanahan won't admit their flaws and keeps players that are awful as starters. Cough cough. Devondre Campbell, he was an internal hire and another one of Kyle Shanahan's. Yes, meant he should be fired after this season, but I doubt Kyle will do it. The number one priority would be for us to bring in Robert Saleh. He's very familiar with most of the team, and before he was fired from the Jets he had them as a top defense for the past few seasons. He's a great defensive mind and is a priority one need. The next is a really good defensive coordinator, but not so good coach. Dennis Allen is one of those coaches that is amazing as a coordinator, but a piss poor coach. I think job in Indianapolis and was doing decently in Chicago. I think with the right personnel and players, he could have the 49ers as the top 10 defense again. Fire him, it was a bad hire. He did awful things in LA with the Chargers. Never should have hired him. This was a stupid decision by Kyle Shanahan, plain and simple. Fire Brandon Staley. Brian Schneider has been a menace, terrorist, to the 49ers specialties unit. It showed in the Super Bowl, and he should have been fired after that. I do not understand why he still has a job with the team. Currently, he has been god-awful this year. The 49ers have a bottom-of-the-league special teams unit, one of the worst in the entire NFL. We should hire Richard Hightower from the Chicago Bears. The Bears have had a pretty good specialty unit this year, and honestly, anybody would be better than Brian Schneider. I don't really have an opinion on Chris. I think he's a good run game coordinator and an okay offensive line coach. He hasn't really had the best track record with O-line except for Pooney. He did great last year with CMC, but I don't know how much it has to do with him, or that Kyle was calling the plays. I'd keep Chris, but only have him as the run game coordinator and bring in Hank Early from the Lions as our new offensive line coach. Detroit has had one of the top 3 offensive lines in the past few seasons, and I think he would help a lot and bring in some new life and experience to the team. I'd bring in Troy Walters to replace our current wide receivers coach, because I feel like he's done a pretty good job with everyone over in Cincinnati. And to the current wide receivers we have on the roster outside of B.A. Jennings and Ricky aren't that good. I mean, we just cut Bell yesterday. It's just time for major change throughout the organization. I think the 49ers should bring in Bobby Petrino, just for some fresh new set of ideas and a new brain to help Kyle Shanahan with the office not necessarily hands-on, but someone else there to help him because Kyle makes some dumb decisions a lot of the time and another person there, especially on OC, could really help him, and it helps that Bobby has the Razorbacks as a top 10 offense in all of college football. I don't have much info on Brian Fleury, but I think it's time for a change. The only good tight end we have is George Kittle. We haven't had the best track record in developing tight ends in the past few years, especially with the ones we picked last year like Willis and Latu. I know that could also be a factor that Kyle overdrafted Latu. I just think we need to upgrade at the position. I think we should bring in Steve Hayden. He's done a great job at developing Sam Laporta and the rest of the tight ends on the roster. I know it could be a factor in Ben Johnson's play calling, but you gotta admit Laporta is a top 5 tight end in his rookie and sophomore seasons. How much can you count on it being a factor of the office or his development with the coaching staff? I think this would be an out-of-the-park hire for the Niners and future tight ends that we could draft. I think Brian is a good passing game coordinator, and I don't think there's a need to fire him so he could stay, but I think if we had the option to bring in Tanner Engstrand from Detroit, they've done some pretty good things over there, most part to Ben Johnson and Jared Goff, but honestly, I think the team needs some new people in the building to bring some life and energy, because right now the whole organization is hurt and depressed. Daniel Bullock has done a fine job with the 49ers, especially with the development of Lenore, but the rest of the quarters on the roster besides Ward and Green, a personal draft crush, have done great, but I really like what Dave Merritt has done in Kansas City, especially with Snead and Trent McDuffie. I mean, we even interviewed him for a defensive coaching job. I think he's an amazing cornerbacks coach and is great at developing young players. I would fire Johnny Holland and bring in Matt Robinson and Mark DeLeon be our linebackers coaches. I don't think Johnny has done an amazing job at developing players, even though the linebackers that we have drafted have been late round talents. None of them outside of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw have been contributors or good. I think Matt and Mark have done a decent job in Baltimore and could help us develop players. This just feels like the right move to bring in better personnel and freshness into the building. Robert Turner Jr. and Chris Katsurek have done great at their jobs. Both have developed talent and are good coaches. I think we should bring in Nick Raponi. He started a pretty good job in Tampa Bay and has been developing. Tyke Smith enjoys solid safety his rookie season. I just feel like he would bring something more to the table than for Niners have already and develop our rising safeties like Mustafa and Brown. I know Mustafa is already a steal of the draft and a rising player, but I feel like Brown's development hasn't gone the way people thought he would after last season, and I feel like Nick would be able to unlock more of his potential. I don't have an opinion on KJ Wright. He's a quality control coach, so I don't really know much about that. But what I do know is that Seattle Seahawks fans are very pissed that he is a part of the 49ers organization, and I like that. Brock Purdy has done amazing this year considering the fact he wasn't supported by quote the Avengers, as everyone says, and is all-world running back CMC. In my opinion, he is our franchise quarterback. I'm not putting him in an elite category, but he is in a very good category is old. Right. I do not believe he is worth $60 million. I think his sweet spot is nearly $40 million. Kyle is more than likely going to extend him this year. I would offer Brock a 5-year, $175 million deal, $35 million annually. I'm not too sure about guaranteed money, but maybe around $50 mil. I would let Brandon Allen and Josh Dobbs walk. Dobbs should have been treated and should be starting for the Niners right now. CMC, by God, we missed him in this offense. It has been a struggling season without him. He is this team's spark. I'd say let him play out the rest of this year, but share carries in a rotation of Christian, Mason, and Isaac. He's barely returning after that nasty lingering Achilles injury. We're not gonna be competing for anything this year, so don't try to make him a workhorse like last year. CMC is our RB for the next 3 to 4 seasons time frame wise, I'm assuming. He's locked up, but with his injury history and getting up there in age, Jordan Mason is going to walk and be a number 1 RB. On someone else's team, he's got the talent. He just needs the workload. Isaac is improving slowly. He's a big running back, has the speed, but needs to improve on his vision. He's going to be a good project back for the 49ers. Juice doesn't complain. Fan favorite team. Favorite good guy, great blocker, Pro Bowler. I know Cunningham would save money and wouldn't really hurt us, because he's never used all that much, but when he is used, he is elite player in all aspects. Brandon Ayuk was outstanding, a top receiver last year. Master route runner. Sadly, he wasted his whole off-season arguing over his extension and was off to a very slow start this year and sadly tore his ACL against the Chiefs. But I'll tell you this, he'll be back next year, and better than ever. He'll be back to a top wide receiver in the NFL. Juwan Jennings signed his cheap extension this past off-season and nobody batted an eye. But when he was called upon, he has been doing amazing, especially that superstar performance against the Rams. He's a great wide receiver 3 option, but could legitimately be a number 2 if given the targets. I never liked the Ricky pick. I thought that we should have he wasn't worth all that money, less to be a gadget guy. And now this year it's finally showing. I think at the end of the season, the 49ers should trade Deebo Samuel for a 3rd round pick. Thank goodness Bell was cut. He just kept dropping balls, has developed, and it's just been straight awful this year. Chris is nothing more than depth and a good special teams player that we desperately need, because special teams for the 49ers has costing us James and is awful. He's been one of the only bright spots. Jacob really should be used more than what he is. I don't know why Bell was playing more than him. I mean, what's the point of drafting you if you're not gonna try to put him in games and develop him because of all the injuries of the starting wide receivers? He needs development, and Kyle Shanahan needs to see that. George Kittle has been doing amazing this year. There's not much to be said about him. He's an elite titan and elite blocker. Great hands. You already know who he is, the best tight end in football outside of Brock Bowers right now. Eric Saubert is old and a mess second option, but my god, he's getting a lot of flags and penalties. I think the 49ers should just move on from him after this season. Jake Tungs and Braden Willis are nothing more than developmental options at best, basically just practice squad players on the active roster. We need to upgrade tight end badly. I'd let them walk at the end of the season. Nothing much to say about Trent Williams. He's one of the game's best tackles, getting up there in age, but still an elite player. The 49ers desperately need to draft his replacement and let him mentor that player. Aaron Bank is having a career year for him, but he's an above to average guard. I really think we should just let him walk and draft his replacement or sign someone new free agency, because he is not worth extending. I'm sorry, I know a lot of fans like him and think that he's good, but he's average and not worth a new price tag. Jake Brendel is straight up awful. He hasn't been doing good this year outside of some moments. I think on PFF he's the 40th or 30th something ranked center in the NFL in pass blocking, which is crazy, especially for your star. He really shouldn't have been starting his depth at best. That's what he was drafted for. The 49ers should try to trade him for anything even if people think that he's doing better this year. He's not the guy. Jalen Moore, solid backup depth, average starter, nothing more. I can say he's just depth, shouldn't be a starter, but solid second option and roster piece. For 9 Ers should extend him this off-season. I'd say a cheap 2-year deal. Feliciano, I think, was shut down for the rest of the season because of that knee injury. He stepped up big last year for the Niners. Sadly, he was injured in the Super Bowl. He could be solid depth, but he's an older player. Wouldn't mind him coming back on a 1-year deal. Dick, it's nothing more than a developmental practice squad player. He's mainly on the roster because he's Brock Purdy's friend. I think Drake Nugent is better. Spencer Buford isn't good. He was a late pick for a reason. Just depth, shouldn't be a starter, was benched last season. Not much to say on there. Not a great player. Probably be a roster filler for the rest of his career, still under contract, but probably should get cut. I think they have Ben Bark. Underguard, nothing more than practice squad player, didn't do a lot in Jacksonville. Can't see a lot about him. 49ers should let him walk at the end of the year. Nick Bosa. What can I say? Defensive player of the year, all-pro, Pro Bowler, sack leader, pressure machine. A lot of people are completed about him based off of him not getting enough sacks or being a game record, like he was in his defensive player of the year campaign. But him being out these past few weeks has proved why the 49ers need him and why he got all that money. Everybody needs to thank Nick Bosa. Malik Collins, I think he's a solid second option, but he is up there in age. I think he's still under contract, and if he is, the 49ers should keep him if he's a free agent. We should give him an extension, 1 year or 2 at max. He's not a bad player. Javon Hargrave was personally to be last year pretty good, but this year, he didn't look like it at all. Slow, not a lot of effort before his injury, and now he's been out for the year, and it's just a big, expensive, heavy contract for a 30-plus-year-old. The 49ers should just cut him at the end of the year. Leonard Floyd, I really thought was gonna be a solid number 2. He hasn't lived up to what we thought he was going to be in the off-season, but he's not a bad rotational piece. The 49ers just need to upgrade at edge. Nick Bosa needs his partner in crime, unless like he did in Gordon. We're still looking for that player. I know Floyd is under contract, and I think we should keep him. He's not bad, solid piece on the defensive line. Yetter is a solid rotational piece. Robert Beal hasn't really lived up too much in the time that he's gotten to play. Was a shot in the dark pick based off of athleticism. Kalia Davis has been okay, kinda expected more out of him. Also another shot in the dark pick based off of the athleticism. Don't think he's bad, could be a solid roster piece. Depth. Evan Anderson is done really good in the limited amount of time that he's played. Kevin Givens, not much to say. Solid backup depth option, but I'd let him walk in free agency. Haven't gotten much time to look at Khalil Davis. Can't really speak on him. The 49ers traded for him for a reason. They saw something in him, we'll have to see. Drake Jackson has the potential to be a really good player, but can't stay healthy to save his life. It's a really sad situation. Hope he'll be able to come back and show why the 49ers drafted him in the second round. He has the talent, just needs to stay healthy, but probably won't be extended. Fred is the heart and soul of this 49ers defense and the whole team. He was having a defensive player of the year type of start to the season, and reports just came out that he is playing with a fracture in his foot. He's giving his all to this organization. He deserves everything and more, especially a ring. Fred is the best. Give him a massive extension. Dre was underrated to begin with, and now that he's been out for the majority of this year, the 49ers haven't been the same. Without him, he was Robin to Fred's Batman. They just made everything work. Dre has been missed heavily, and hopefully, he'll be able to come back and be what he was before. Give him a massive extension. This season is proof that we need him, don't let him walk. Give him an empty checkbook. Tatum. Not much to say about him, haven't seen all that much good. Spectacular shot, the dark pick. The winners was very promising in the beginning, having an okay Offseason, not the semi-Dre Greenlaw replacement that people were cutting it out to me. Devondre Campbell has been very bad, should have been benched a long time ago for Niners. Should let go of him this off-season, don't try to bring him back. Demetrius, nothing more than a depth piece. Backup special teamer, let him walk, or if you get it back on a 1-year cheap deal, not bad. Green was one of my draft crushes before he shot up draft boards. He's been amazing this year for a rookie at that. He's got a promising career ahead of him and will be a cornerstone for the 49ers for a long time. Ward has been a great player throughout his time with the 49ers. He hasn't been able to show much this year, and it's taking time off for his daughter that had sadly passed away. I'm going to leave it at that. He is a good player and a good father. May his daughter rest in peace. Demo has been phenomenal from a late round draft pick to signing a massive extension with the 49ers. He has work to and nail to get to where he is at. From the bottom of the depth chart to starter, he's amazing, and may he progress more and more throughout his career. Yasin, just a depth piece, not bad if he wants to return. For Niners should sign him into a cheap 1-year deal. Thomas is ass. I really don't like him. He shouldn't have gotten a roster spot over Womack. 49ers need to let him walk. Isaac was really good last year, having OK season coming around in the second half. But it's nothing more than a good depth piece, but the 49ers should let him walk. Luter was nothing more than a developed player shoot in the dark day. 3 pick hasn't really seen much time because of injuries, but when he is on the field, not all that good. Was the main reason last year we lost because he fucked up special teams on the punt, and I really hate him for that. Brown had an amazing rookie year after being thrown into the fire. How to pick a Super Bowl, had big expectations this year. Hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype, but he's been okay. You have to keep in mind, he is a second-year player. He'll develop. Mustafa has been pretty good for a 4th rounder. I know he fell in the draft, but man, he's been excellent in coverage, and a lot of sports articles are putting him as one of the steals of the draft. Great future ahead of him. George Odom, a special teamer. Depth option. I think he's still under contract, but if he's not in, the 49ers should extend him. Gibson had a really good 2 years with the 49ers. Age is catching up to him. Nothing more than a depth piece now, but still could play for considering how old he is. Good manner. Hufanga, I really liked him after we drafted him. I learned more about him and I found out he was a student of Troy's. After that, his whole rookie season, I kept telling people that he was gonna be a star. Wait till he started. I was telling my dad, and then what do you know? Second year, he breaks out all pro bowler, and then sadly last year went down. With that injury, came back this year. Doubted. A lot of people didn't like him. He was switched up on really quick. Comey back injured, out for the year again. I still believe he could be an all-pro bowler again, but it depends on the team he goes to. I say after this year, he walks sides with maybe like the Texans. I would love nothing more than for him to be a 49 for a long time. But right now we don't have the money and is injured past. I think Huff needs a fresh start. I don't like our special teams unit. I think Mitch is an average punter at best. People can say that he's good or is having a good year, or I think it was a Pro Bowl alternate, but he's not that good and I don't think he deserved that extension. We could find better puncture and free agency or the draft. Pepper is a good long snapper, great personality and locker room guy. I hate Moody. I said this from the beginning. That was a terrible giraffe pick to take it with the 3rd. He was a 5th at most to a 6th round draft pick. You should not spend that high on a kicker in the 3rd round when you have serious needs at other positions. He hasn't been good this year and people have really been hating him. In my opinion, they should try to go after the kicker from the Panthers in free agency and cut Jake Moody. These are the 49ers free agents. The only one I'd consider bringing back would be Jalen Moore. Everyone can walk. In this section, I'm going to go over some free agents that I would target in free agency for the 49ers. I would try and target Ronnie Stanley in free agency if the Ravens don't give him a big extension this offseason. He did having a great season after battling with injuries in the past few years. I'd look to give him something in the 20-1 a year range, maybe a 2-year or 3-year deal, 3-year, $60 million contract, maybe 20 to 30 million guaranteed. Ronnie Stanley is indeed having a very good year in 2024, showing a significant bounce back from previous injury-plagued seasons, and is considered one of the top left tackles in the league, making him a potential candidate for a contract extension before he hits free agency in 2025. Many analysts are highlighting his strong play as a key factor for the Baltimore Ravens' success this season. After dealing with injuries in recent years, Stanley is currently playing at a high level with consistent availability. Several analytics platforms are ranking Stanley among the top 5. I would aim to target James Houston, formerly of the Lions, now on the Browns. I think for a cheap deal, we could bring him onto the squad as solid depth. The 26-year-old was drafted in the 6th round of the 2022 draft and had 8 sacks in 7 games during his rookie year. He dealt with an injury in 2023, but was in and out of the lineup this season. He played in 8 games and had 8 tackles and a sack for the Lions. The Detroit Lions released reserve defensive end James Houston, cutting ties with a player who failed to produce as well as he did during his rookie season. The NFC leading Lions 10-1 made the move on Tuesday, 2 days before hosting Chicago 4-7 in their annual Thanksgiving game. I'd bring in Joe Flacco simply for the leadership that he can bring to the QB room and experience that he can give to Brock. Flacco wins the Associated Press Comeback Player of the Year, the 5th straight quarterback to win the award. Flacco led the NFL in pass attempts 204, passing yards 1,316, passing touchdowns 13, and interceptions 8, from Week 13 through 17, 4 of which were starts. I would target Milton Williams in free agency. I would give him a 4-year $40 or $32 million deal. Williams started 10 games in 2023, recording 26 stops, 25 pressures, and a career-high 5 sacks. He also had 42 tackles, 3 TFLs, and 7 QB hits. Williams is a key player in the Eagles' defensive line, which is getting younger after Fletcher Cox retired. He's expected to share interior snaps with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in 2024. Williams is a free agent in 2025, and some say he could be an extension candidate for the Eagles. If he plays well in 2024, his value could continue to rise. Williams has been described as tough, hard-working, and a good teammate. He's also been able to play defensive end in 5-man fronts. A Milton Williams contract extension would likely be in the range of a mid-tier defensive tackle contract, featuring a significant guaranteed sum, an average annual salary around the $10 to $15 million range, with incentives tied to tackles for loss and sacks, reflecting his ability to disrupt plays both as a pass rusher and run defender. Considering his current performance and the rising market value of interior defensive linemen in the NFL, I would bring in Willie Gay as an insurance option. I'd give him a 2-year, $10 million contract. The linebacker had 4 tackles, 3 solo, in the Chiefs' 5-2 victory over the San Francisco 49ers. They finished the 2023 regular season with 58 tackles, 40 solo, 1 sack, 4 passes defensed, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, and 3 fumble recoveries in 16 games. Willie Gay Jr.'s contract with the New Orleans Saints for the 2024 season is a 1-year deal worth up to $5 million, guaranteed $3 million at signing, base salary $1,800,000, signing bonus $1,200,000, cap hit $3 million, dead cap value $3 million. I would target Asani Samuel Jr. in free agency. I'd offer him length 4 years, Total value, $72 million. Average annual value AAV, $18 million. Guaranteed money, $42 million upfront and practical guarantees. Signing bonus, $18 million. Breakdown. 1. Year 1 2025. Base salary, $1 million. Signing bonus, $18 million. Spread out over the deal for cap purposes, $4.5 million. Year. Roster bonus, $3 million. Paid if on the roster at the start of the league year. Cap hit, $8.5 million. 2. Year to 2026. Base salary, $12 million fully guaranteed. Roster bonus, $3 million. Cap hit, $19.5 million. To move on in later years if his performance declines. This is comparable to contracts for top young cornerbacks. While reflecting potential future salary cap increases, Los Angeles Chargers cornerback Asani Samuel Jr. went from being one of the league's best up-and-coming players to a mere afterthought in 2024, mainly due to landing on injured reserve that held his year's efforts to just 4 games. Plus, with the regime change in Southern California, it's hard to gauge whether or not Samuel fits into the Bolts' long-term plans anyway. Samuel, who might bet on himself, at 25 years old on a 1-year, prove-it kind of deal, would have familiarity with San Francisco's assistant head coach, Brandon Staley, assuming he stays in franchise, and the 49ers are likely going to need another cornerback anyway with the probable free agent departure of Charvarius Ward this offseason, having Samuel as a nickel option to pair with corners Diamador Lenoir and Renardo Green wouldn't be the worst idea in 2025. I'm gonna target kicker Eddie Pinheiro. Eddie Pinheiro is now the NFL's most accurate kicker. His 89.38% accuracy on field goals is the best among kickers with a minimum of 100 attempts. Pinheiro's climb to the top of the leaderboard was made possible by recent struggles for the Baltimore Ravens' usually reliable Justin Tucker. I would offer him a 3-year contract, value $7.5 million, $10 million total, annual average $3 million, $3.5 million per year, guaranteed money $4 million, $5 million. So those are my thoughts and what we should do with the current roster.